And before this video begins, I'd just like to give a special thank you to my Asbantium level patron, Fallon Cortez. Thank you for supporting the channel. So here we are at last. You've been waiting long enough. When it comes to the all-time great series of Doctor Who, most people would suggest things like Series 1, Series 4, Series 5 or Series 10. These are all fantastic series in their own right and do great things for the show, but my favourite is a little bit different. For me, the highlight of Doctor Who, in the modern era at least, is the somewhat polarising Series 9. From the wastelands of Skaro to the burning sands of Gallifrey, this ambitious series is the epic last hurrah of one of the best Doctor companion pairings of all time, and tells a truly incredible story of grief, mortality and toxic love by really pushing the boundaries of what Doctor Who can be. So join me today as we take a look at the good and the bad of the indomitable Doctor Who Series 9, 9 years after it materialised on our screens. Yes, it's finally time for a deep dive into Doctor Who's greatest series. In my opinion at least, don't shoot.
These have been the best years of my life, and they are mine.
Airing in 2015, Doctor Who Series 9 sees the continuing adventures of the 12th Doctor and his loyal companion Clara Oswald. When we left off these characters in Series 8, the Doctor had confronted his moral dilemma of whether he is a good man, and Clara had lost her boyfriend Danny Pink to the Cyberman plot enacted by the Doctor's old enemy Missy. Series 8 was great, aside from a few stinkers here and there. It transitioned the show into a darker, more high concept tone, which really shook things up and changed what people expected from Doctor Who, moving away from the very fantastical fairy tale atmosphere of Series 5 and 6. I know a lot of people are critical of Series 8, but I think it's an incredible series that really honed in on exploring the nuanced and developing characteristics of the Doctor and Clara, especially their relationship with one another. I love how the series did this. Episodes like Listen, Kill the Moon, Mummy on the Orient Express and Flatline really deconstructing who these characters are and what drives them. It challenged the previous 7 series' deification of the Doctor and showed him in a new light, presenting this new and very different dynamic right after the 11th Doctor's regeneration into the 12th. It was a very introspective series of the show and ushered in a new era of storytelling and narrative arcs. Series 8 was essentially the foundation, the building blocks, which Series 9 takes and builds upon in such an excellent way, developing those character deconstructions and paying them off in the perfect way over the course of the entire series. As I mentioned, Series 8 largely revolved around the Doctor's dilemma of whether he is a good man, or who he really is beneath all his jokes and schemes. A lot of people didn't like how this shifted his character into a darker, more unlikable version of the Doctor, but it worked really well, and Series 9 continues the character development by having him mellow a little bit more. He still has a lot of the snark and dismissive jokes he had in the previous series, but it's very clear that he feels a lot more comfortable with his identity. Peter Capaldi is absolutely on top form throughout the whole series, and he delivers another masterclass performance as the Doctor. Series 9 has it all. It has the quippy comedic one-liners, the big epic speeches, and the quiet emotional moments, with Capaldi once again showing just how incredibly familiar he is with the Doctor as a multifaceted character. It's a joy to watch the 12th Doctor in this series. He's so compelling to follow.
Even a ghastly future is better than no future at all.
Capaldi's take on the Doctor is very complex and full of depth. I personally believe it's the best in the history of the character. He perfectly blends together all the core characteristics of the Doctor, and Series 9 specifically allows him to expand more upon the humour while still maintaining the ancient pain and trauma of this iconic character. It's so well handled in this series specifically.
It's okay, I understand. You're an idiot.
But of course, not only is the Doctor an incredible part of Series 9, so is his companion. In Series 9 we meet and reunite with a number of friendly faces, like Ashilda, Kate Stewart, and to an extent, Missy.
No, I've not turned good.
But these all pale in comparison to the phenomenal Clara Oswald, who hits top form in Jenna Coleman's last series as a companion. I know Clara is a polarising character, but to me, her story in Series 9 is nothing short of a masterclass at developing a companion and ending their stay in the most fitting way possible. Much like the Doctor, Clara in Series 9 is a lot more confident in her own identity, She transcends the usual companion nature of weakly getting captured and asking basic questions, instead becoming more like the Doctor's equal. A lot of people hate this, but it's an excellent direction for a companion to go down at least once. After losing Danny in the Series 8 finale, Clara essentially loses her link to humanity, that last tether to the real world. Throughout Series 8, this character was battling an addiction to her TARDIS lifestyle, so Series 9 shows what happens when she gives into that addiction and spirals out of control. After The Magician's Apprentice opens with Clara teaching at Coal Hill, we never see it again, despite it being the primary Earth location of Series 8. After this point, we pretty much never see Clara having a life outside of the TARDIS, and it really hammers home how she's losing herself in this and allowing it to consume her life, which is an amazing story to tell, and this series absolutely nails it.
I want another adventure. Come on, you feel the same?
Throughout Series 9, Clara becomes an increasingly more capable and independent character without even realising it. Previous episodes like Kill the Moon and Flatline saw her struggling with making decisions like the Doctor, with Mummy on the Orient Express showing her just how hard it is to be this kind of person. However, in Series 9, she's very quick to take risks and make big decisions, compared to how hesitant she was in the previous series. Just look at The Girl Who Died, where Clara throws herself headfirst into danger to protect a Shielder, even if it goes against the Doctor's own plan. Coleman's nuanced performance allows her to seamlessly transition between the comedic moments and the more dramatic scenes. She's never one-dimensional, so Clara herself feels very much like the Doctor in that sense, showing how this character is essentially trying to emulate the person she idolizes and aspires to become like.
We assume we're gonna win.
Peter Capaldi is exceptional in Series 9, but Jenna Coleman absolutely deserves the same respect too, particularly for her performance in the Zygon Invasion and the Zygon Inversion, where she not only plays Clara, but also her evil Zygon duplicate Bonnie, who is a very different and distinct character. Coleman's talent is so impressive that she makes both of these roles feel so distinct that you completely forget they're being performed by the same person. It shows how much range Jenna Coleman has in Series 9. She really steps up as Capaldi's true equal. It's such a pleasure to watch her shine in every episode she's in, showing Clara's development in both subtle and very clear ways.
Oh, Clara Oswald, what have I made of you?
Clara is a fantastic element of Series 9, oozing complexity, emotional depth, and nuanced vulnerability, but it's really her partnership with the 12th Doctor that serves as the highlight of the series, with their relationship continuing to develop and deepen in a really gripping way. In Series 8, the pair were often at odds due to their different outlooks on life and the Doctor's harsh new personality, but in this series, they're much more of a united front, trusting each other deeply and almost becoming a bit of a yin-yang of sorts. You can see throughout the series how they're influencing one another, both good and bad traits rubbing off on each other, as they evolve both independently and as a very close, loving and immensely loyal pairing who can't be without one another. Their core characteristics both contrast and complement each other in a great way, almost like they're two halves of one entity. I guess you could even go so far as to say that the Doctor and Clara are a hybrid, just like the hybrid of your finger pressing those like and subscribe buttons. Got you again. Okay, so the big story arc of Series 9 is the idea of a hybrid as prophesied by the Time Lords, who fear it immensely. Now, modern Doctor Who loves a story arc, and up until Series 9 it was always very literal. Series 1 had Bad Wolf appearing everywhere with the reveal of the Bad Wolf entity in the finale. Series 2 and 3 did the same with Torchwood and Harold Saxon respectively. Series 4 had disappearing planets, Series 5 had the cracks in time, so on and so forth. However, Series 9 knows you're expecting something literal to come of the hybrid story, with many different types of hybrids appearing throughout the series. There's the Dalek Time Lord hybrids in the opener, the human Maya hybrid of Ashilda, and of course the Zygons, which it kind of goes without saying. However, the truth is, the hybrid is abstract. You spend the whole time expecting some kind of literal translation of the prophecy, because that's what the show has trained you to expect, when in actuality the truth is hiding in plain sight the entire time, because the whole thing is about this evolution and increasingly more toxic relationship of the Doctor and Clara as they grow more alike and destructive with how protective they are of one another.
I'm changing history to save Clara.
A big aspect of the Doctor's character showrunner Stephen Moffat loved to explore was the idea of him having a duty of care for his companions and the people around him. We see it a number of times throughout the era, but it's something especially prevalent when it comes to the Doctor and Clara specifically. Ever since the Bells of St. John, we have seen just how immensely protective the Doctor is of Clara, always desperate to look after her and keep her safe. This is something we see growing throughout Series 8, and it really comes to the forefront in Series 9 as he notices his companion's recklessness. There's a fantastic scene in Under the Lake where he calls Clara out for trying to be like him, trying to remind her of her own mortality and inability to be him.
Don't go native.
What do you mean I'm not?
He can see what she's turning into, but he's powerless to stop her, even when he tries to stage this intervention of sorts. I like the touch of almost every episode separating this pairing and forcing them to deal with situations on their own and confront the idea of each other dying, seeing how far they will go to either save or avenge each other because their relationship is that dangerous.
They'll burn everything. Us too.
The Witch's Familiar has the Doctor believing Clara has been killed, with Before the Flood then inverting that and swapping their roles. All these episodes constantly play with the main character dynamics, pushing them to their breaking point over and over again and showing us a real dark side of both characters.
Die with whoever comes after me, you do not leave me!
It's almost like every episode is the Doctor and Clara tempting fate and getting overconfident because they always seem to make it out alive, just like we expect them to.
Well, don't worry, daft old man. I'm not going anywhere.
One of the main themes in Series 9 is the idea of mortality. Right from the beginning, we're presented with the idea of the Doctor preparing for his death, accepting his mortality in the form of his confession dial. Of course, he doesn't die in the opening story like he expected to, but the idea of mortality, loss, and grief remains throughout the series. Under the Lake Before the Flood presents literal ghosts, creating a really heartbreaking story for side characters Bennett and O'Donnell, who never told each other how they really felt, leaving Bennett to mourn and grieve even after the Doctor flies away.
Tell her there's no point in wasting time, because things happen and then it's too late.
There are many significant deaths in Series 8 and 9, they're some of the most brutal series with so many side characters dying. This comes to a head in The Girl Who Died, when Ashilda dies and the Doctor can't take it anymore. He's so sick of losing people, so he elects to resurrect her at the cost of making her immortal.
Sick of losing people.
It's a fantastic example of the series' approach to mortality and the Doctor's growing denial of it and his refusal to accept loss.
I'm the Doctor, and I save people.
Seeing the Doctor resurrect Ashilda is very similar to him going all Time Lord victorious and believing he can play God because of all the good he has done for the universe. He feels entitled, which we again see in the finale. Of course, Ashilda herself demonstrates how wrong the Doctor is to do something like this by cursing her with eternal life, seeing everyone she's ever cared about die and become a distant memory. The Doctor seals Ashilda into a life of pain and torment, something he himself knows all too well.
Immortality is everybody else dying.
Throughout her subsequent appearances, Ashilda becomes a very blunt and distant, almost emotionless character. She turns into a villain of sorts, a monster of the Doctor's own creation, serving as a warning sign of the damage he can do when he goes too far, no matter how noble his intent.
Do you ever think or care what happens after you've flown away?
Of course, both the Doctor and Clara's relationship and the themes of grief dovetail perfectly in the final 3 episodes of the series. These 3 episodes are a fantastic exploration of grief and just how far these two characters will go for one another. Face the Raven sees the culmination of Clara's incredible character journey as she finally pushes her luck too far. Face the Raven is an incredible episode, beginning as an intriguing murder mystery episode with a great sci-fi setting, but its true genius comes from how it plays with audience expectation. As a viewer, you expect it to be a fascinating yet ultimately inconsequential episode due to its placement within the series. However, this all changes as Clara elects to protect her friend Rixie from the quantum lock death sentence of the titular Raven. This is a big triumphant moment of thinking like the Doctor, using the villain's own plan against them and taking a bold risk to save the day with confident swagger.
This is Doctor 101, we're buying time.
It's the perfect thing for this version of Clara to do, highlighting her overconfidence and desperation to be the Doctor. It's this recklessness and desperation that ultimately costs her everything, because she rushes it. She doesn't know just how meticulously the Doctor plans things, and she tries to play it by ear like he always seems to do. It's therefore tragic, albeit a bit deserved, when this attempt at glory blows up in Clara's face with the reveal that Ashilda always planned to free Rixie, but Clara has now sealed her own fate. This reveal is such a spectacular rug pull, an amazing twist that comes like a punch to the gut. After all that confidence, that foolproof plan, it all falls apart because Clara can never truly be the Doctor.
Why should I be so reckless? You're reckless all the bloody time. Why can't I be like you?
The climax of Face the Raven is such an incredible part of Doctor Who. It's so cinematic and perfectly emotional, introducing the idea of the final 3 episodes exploring the stages of grief. Even within this scene, Clara goes through all the stages as she as the Doctor come to accept her fate. She thought she was doing the right thing, but she knows that there's no escape and she just has to take responsibility and, well, face the Raven. I went into a lot of detail about the scene in my individual episode review, but it's such a fantastic moment written and performed so well. The whole series builds up to a moment like this, Clara forgetting her own mortality because of her addiction.
Maybe this is why I kept running. Maybe this is why I kept taking all those stupid risks, kept pushing it.
The 12th Doctor and Clara have a love that's deeper than even romance, without being in love, and this tragic goodbye shows that so well. The Doctor is scared to lose Clara and be all alone, with Capaldi really showcasing the helplessness and raw emotion. They've become codependent, and the Doctor believes he's to blame for this all, even though it's just one of those things that happens in this lifestyle. But as I mentioned, he has that duty of care.
I should have taken care of you.
I never asked you to.
You shouldn't have to ask.
Clara's death coming so soon in the series is remarkably unexpected and a welcome twist to drive home the harsh emotion of it all. It's by far my favourite companion departure and it hits so hard every time. Clara's death is a reminder of how remarkable the Doctor really is for all of his feats, but it still honours Clara's own character journey and respects her identity and agency as a character. Her actions in the episode are still brave and heroic, but she just made the wrong move and simply has to face the consequences of it. It's the perfect way to kickstart the ending of the series, and it really drives home the idea of mortality.
Goodbye, Doctor.
Part of the reason Heaven Sent works so well is because it builds upon the foundation of Face the Raven. This one-hander takes the Doctor at his lowest, most vengeful moment and places him within this constantly shifting prison of isolation, followed relentlessly by a creepy spectre from his own nightmares. It's possibly the greatest episode of the entire show, especially for how it continues to explore those themes of mortality, loss and grief. The Doctor is fresh off losing the person he loves more than anything else, and he's furious about how helpless he was to save her. He doesn't know how to handle this loss after it initially happens because, as he says,
It's all the days. They stay dead.
the wounds are still so fresh and raw, and it's heartbreaking to see him constantly talk as if Clara is there with him, only to remember she's gone. Heaven Sent really humanises the Doctor as a broken hero quietly suffering without closure. It's an amazing exploration of the complex maze of grief and how hard it is for him to move on.
Whatever I do, you still won't be there.
He still has so much he wishes he could say to Clara. Unlike with previous companion deaths, the Doctor can't just run away from this one. He has to face it himself, just like how he can't run from the veil. The theme of grief also takes the form of the constant repetition as the Doctor has to break through the Asbantian wall in this painful, lengthy process that also serves as an allegory of the Doctor's own lack of mortality, burning himself up to keep going eternally. And despite all the pain and torment he goes through in this episode, how does the Doctor keep himself going?
You are not the only person who ever lost someone.
Even though she's dead, the Doctor still relies on Clara to save him, having this vision of sorts giving him motivation to keep fighting, just like when she was alive. It's another example of the codependence of their relationship, the Doctor needing Clara to act as his conscience even in his lowest moments. Heaven Sent is undoubtedly a masterpiece of character exploration, and Hellbent continues this in a truly excellent way. I know a lot of people expected this episode to be some big epic showdown with the return of Gallifrey and the Time Lords, but it never needed to be that. It was absolutely right to go in the more character-led direction. It once again follows the overall idea of grief and loss. The Doctor's still furious about losing Clara and desperate to get revenge or save her even if it destroys everything, because his grief has driven him into madness, even willing to gun down his fellow kind.
Oh, I've barely started.
Despite it being wrong, the Doctor uses Time Lord technology to pull Clara out of her moment of death to try and save her, continuing to show how he would break every rule he has ever lived by just to protect her, even though a shielder stands as a testament to why he can't meddle with life and death like this. The Doctor essentially becomes a villain of sorts in this finale, going too far and becoming the same vengeful monster Clara had begged him not to become at the end of Face the Raven.
Promise me. Be a doctor.
He's in deep denial about her death, lost in heroic delusion and willing to fight the laws of time itself.
As of this moment, I'm answerable to no one!
Much like Clara's character journey, this was telegraphed throughout Series 9, culminating brilliantly in this very selfish climax as he's willing to trade the universe itself for Clara's life. But deep down the Doctor is aware he has gone too far, trying to wipe Clara's memories of him to keep her alive without entirely fracturing the web of time.
Oh, Clara, Oswald. What am I doing?
This whole scene is amazing, especially as it ends in the Doctor losing his memories, almost like the price he has to pay for going so far off the rails.
I became the hybrid. This is right. I accept it.
This moment of acceptance caps off the trilogy and the idea of grief and mortality, because summer doesn't last forever. The Doctor has to accept the finality of it all, just like Clara had already done in Face the Raven. He still has a lot of growth to go through, like we see in the subsequent Christmas specials, where he also has to accept the death of River Song and say goodbye to her too.
Not everything can be avoided. Not forever.
The incredible and emotional ending for the Doctor and Clara also brings me to one of the other core themes and storylines of Series 9. Trust. Whilst grief and mortality are the core components of the series, trust also plays a significant role throughout most of the episodes. I already touched upon the trust the Doctor and Clara have for one another, especially with how often they're separated in the series, but the idea of trust also extends to the side characters and narratives like Rixie trusting Clara in her plan and the Doctor's uneasy relationship with the Shielder. However, the betrayal of trust is by far the most prominent. Right from the beginning, we have Davros gaining his old enemy's trust with some fantastic scenes in The Witch's Familiar as he opens up to the Doctor.
I wish, just once, we had been on the same side.
These moments are amazing and hint towards many layers of vulnerability underneath the evil exterior of the mad scientist, but it all turns out to be a ruse to steal the Doctor's regeneration energy, much like how Missy abuses Clara's wary trust in her, resulting in the Doctor almost killing his own companion out of anger, which, you know, kind of foreshadowing.
Kill it, Doctor. They're all gonna die anyway.
Indulge yourself, go on.
All throughout the series, there is this idea of villains abusing trust, like Rasmussen and the Zygons, especially with that incredible scene of the Zygons tricking the unit soldiers by using their very emotions and family against them. Even the Doctor, our hero, plays into this idea of abusing trust with how he almost sacrifices O'Donnell to test a hypothesis.
Yeah, but you didn't try very hard to stop her though, did you?
The series explores the danger of blind trust, showing how people like the Vikings can be manipulated by the mire they consider gods, or how a shielder can be tricked and turned into an evil tool by Leandro.
What is a god but the cattle's name for farmer?
It's a fascinating throughline during Series 9, seeing all these examples of trust and how it can be abused, culminating perfectly with that example of the Doctor and Clara trusting one another at the end of all things, even if it costs the very friendship that built that trust to begin with. They have to trust each other because they're on the exact same page. Neither of them know which one's going to lose their memories, so again, they just have to trust. Series 9 is a great example of Doctor Who's masterclass in thematic storytelling. It perfectly weaves these rich tapestries of emotion with the undercurrent of grief, mortality and trust. But even outside of these themes and deeper layers, Series 9 is incredible. The writing is phenomenal, especially the Under the Lake and Zygon two-parters and the ending trilogy. Of course, there are some weaker stories like Girl Who Died, Woman Who Lived and Sleep No More, but even then, the production is so excellent. It's one of the best directed series of the show even to this day. All the episodes are so utterly gorgeous, covering so much ground visually with such a wide array of distinct and impressive settings. The underwater base is one of the best sets in the entire Moffat era, designed so meticulously and practically, it's just incredible. And, of course, Heaven Sent is far and away the best looking episode of the series. Rachel Talale's vision is truly incredible. Heaven Sent has such a variety of locations and shots that lend a great feeling of emptiness and isolation to the episode. The directing, cinematography and lighting all combine to create the perfect atmosphere and tone for the story Heaven Sent tells, making it one of the most visually striking episodes the show has ever been blessed with, along with its iconic soundtrack by Murray Gold, which needs no introduction. Hellbent is an equally gorgeous episode, the location filming really bringing to life the burnt orange landscape of Gallifrey and all its interior locations are great. I simply adore the visual storytelling and world building of Series 9. Every episode has such deep history to it, with so much lore and a feeling of a universe that's actually lived in. From Colony Sarf's journey at the beginning of The Magician's Apprentice, to the fascinating space station of Sleep No More, and the infamous legacy of entities like the Fisher King and the Maya, the world of Series 9 specifically feels so extensive and fleshed out, and it really just makes the series shine. Within this world, there are loads of interesting entities, good and evil. Of course, there's the familiar face of Missy up to her usual deceptive tricks, although I like how she's more of a reluctant ally in the opening story, kickstarting her gradual redemption arc for Series 10. You also get the ever-present Unit, with Kate Stewart once again showing how different she and the Doctor are, clashing over the Zygon plot and how to resolve it.
We should have that gas. We should be able to rip them inside out.
Kate's at her most interesting in this series, with actual understandable conflicting motivations and a layered character identity she seems to have lost ever since. However, by far the most interesting and engaging friendly characters are the crew of the drama underwater base. All these characters feel so distinct and unique with great writing and acting. They genuinely come across as real people we've stumbled into the lives of. I said it in my review of the two-parter, but the base crew feels like it could be the cast of a full Stargate-like show. They're characterised that well as individuals.
I've not seen technology like this.
Please don't say on Earth.
Of course, not everyone in the series is as great. There are the less impressively written Daleks and the pretty mediocre Maya, along with the dead on arrival Sandmen. But on the whole, it's a great series for interesting allies and enemies. Hell, even Grant Gordon is kind of decent. Speaking of wannabe Superman Grant Gordon, Series 9 is a pretty experimental series, pushing the limits of what Doctor Who can be. There is, of course, the superhero story Christmas special, but even in the main series, there's all sorts of experimentation and pushing the envelope. Sleep No More tells an entire episode in found footage style, which leads to a really unique and unprecedented atmosphere for Doctor Who, almost like you yourself are immersed within the narrative alongside the characters. Before the Flood also experiments with time travel, having the cast split into the future and the past, allowing the episode to explore concepts like paradoxes and causality in a really great way we rarely actually get to see in Doctor Who.
You can't just go back and cut off tragedy at the root, because then you really do see ghosts.
The two-parter format of Series 9 allows for these kinds of stories to be told in satisfying ways compared to the traditional single-episode majority. Series 9 takes a very classic Who approach of having almost every story be a multi-parter, and this lets it really dwell on its locations, characters and narratives. We get more time on Skaro exploring the unlikely duos of the Doctor and Davros and Clara and Missy.
Every miner needs a canary.
We're given the chance to truly see the scale and impact of the Zygon Revolution. The episodes are given so much more time to breathe and it just thrives as a result. Even the episodes that aren't official two-parters, like The Girl Who Died and The Woman Who Lived, share narrative threads expanding upon storylines and pushing themes forward, with these two episodes showing two very different sides of Ishilda and allowing the series to punctuate that curse of immortality the Doctor has bestowed upon her. Everywhere you look in Series 9 there is a sense of experimentation and freshness. Even the final two episodes are incredible character studies. Heaven Sent this very unprecedented one-hander story with a lot of monologuing as the Doctor takes centre stage.
I'm nothing without an audience.
And then Hellbent is also a fantastic character piece, subverting the kind of preconceived notions viewers would have and delivering another flawless character study of the 12th Doctor. It's a very different type of finale, but it caps off the thematic and character-based storytelling so perfectly.
Stories are what memories go when they're forgotten.
I think the legacy of Hellbent is essentially the legacy of Series 9 in a microcosm. It's heavily experimental, pushing a lot of boundaries, and focusing more on characters and themes than any series before, but a lot of people just weren't really ready for it yet. It's unfortunately one of the more disliked series of the modern era of Doctor Who, but I feel like it's an example of misunderstood genius. Sure, it has Dalek sewers, eye booger monsters, and fire-breathing furries, but those things are just surface level. There's so much more to love about Series 9 than there is to hate, in my opinion at least. It's really the pinnacle of the Capaldi era, the creative team firing on all cylinders and getting everything so perfectly right. Whether you love Series 9 or hate it, it's impossible to deny that it's different. Maybe you think it's different in a good way, or maybe you think it's different in a bad way. But the one thing everyone has to agree on is that it feels unlike any other modern Doctor Who series, and I think that's a good legacy to have. Variety is the spice of life, that and paprika, I guess. Series 9 really stands out, and I love it for that. But unfortunately, I think it was just ahead of its time. People weren't prepared for such an experimental and different series with this polarizing showrunner and leading duo. Series 9 continued a downward trend for viewership, with many mixed reviews, criticism of Clara, and a widespread derision for Hellbent and its treatment of Gallifrey. However, the fact that this series still continues to spark so much discussion and interpretation shows how much of an impact it has had on Doctor Who as a whole. It treated Doctor Who like a very complex, character-led show, trying to compete with big prestige dramas, and I think it held its own. Instead of large-scale, universe-ending threats, there was instead an intimate focus on personal journeys and moral complexity, adding a real sense of depth and nuance. The serialization was an interesting step in a new direction, and I think it was right to try mixing things up so much. It's clearly the kind of experimental and serialized project Moffat wanted to make with Series 6, with a lot more maturity, cohesion, and technical excellence. It closes doors like Clara's journey, which still ends on Trap Street as we see. Her travels with Ashilda don't change that fate, by the way. But it also opens a lot of doors for Series 10 to continue the character development of the Doctor and Missy, so it's an incredible middle act for the 12th Doctor. Series 9 is my favourite series of Doctor Who. That's my own personal opinion, and nobody can take that away from me. Series 4 is always my go-to when it comes to good vibes and having fun, but Series 9 is really a gold standard for thematic storytelling and complex character exploration. It oozes high-concept prestige drama, pushing so many boundaries and taking Doctor Who to a new level it really needed to reach for. Every episode brings something new, for better or for worse. It's one of, if not the most visually impressive and gorgeous series in the entire show, looking absolutely sublime and better than even later episodes with higher budgets and fancier equipment. There's a lot of excellent world building woven throughout the series, with a lot of interesting faces and enemies old and new, so it feels like a very busy series in the best way possible. The Doctor and Clara go on one of the most thematically rich and emotionally gripping stories I've ever seen in Doctor Who, with each character carving out their own distinct journey and identity, along with their shared journey the perfect ending for their partnership. Their story of toxic love and dependence unfolds so well throughout the series, a really different type of Doctor-companion relationship that needed to be explored. From the high concept production and incredible character narratives to the fleshed out world building and experimental structure, Series 9 builds upon the foundation of Series 8 and really blossoms, standing proudly at a rare, prestigious S rank on the overall Doctor Who tier list. If I was a hack fraud wrestling reviewer, I'd even give it a 7-star out of a 5-star system. My love for Series 9 cannot be overstated. Peter Capaldi continues to show why he's the best Doctor. Jenna Coleman delivers her best performances as Clara, the story arcs are so deep and compelling, and the whole thing feels like a bold step in a brave new direction for Doctor Who. Of course, I can understand it's not for everyone. It's not the kind of series for people who prefer lighter, more comedic romps through time and space, but sometimes you need to shake it up a bit with a different approach like this, changing tones and narrative styles. Series 9 balances these things well. There's still a lot of levity and comedic charm despite all the dark and complex storytelling, and at risk of sounding like one of those guys, a lot of people don't like it because they just don't get it. The hybrid was simply the Doctor and Clara. It wasn't a literal entity like many fans still seem to think, so there's nothing unresolved there. The story was told, and in the words of the narrative itself, it was sad and it was beautiful. I hope you enjoyed this video as much as I enjoyed making it, and as always, thank you very much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye. And I'd just like to give an extra special thank you to my Asbantium level patron Fallon Cortez, my Diamond level patron Glenna Clark, my Platinum level patrons Matthew Burns and Maximilian Foreman, and all my Gold level patrons Daniel Shillito, Francois Nako Line Vortex, Lee Marie Farrell, Thomas R, and Thomas Price. Thank you so much for your support.